Hi there, this is Debbie Nicholson. I'm the Director of Community Outreach for BeatCancer. And today I'm very lucky enough to have with me Dr. Marilyn Joyce. She is actually on our medical advisory panel, lucky us. And she's just so dynamic. She has done every major TV talk show, Maury, Povich, Leeza, Jenny Jones. She's written for a lot of major magazines. She's a trainer, an educator, an author, and her books are very interesting because they have to do with energy and stress. Two things that most of us struggle with, whether we have a diagnosis or not. Or these are issues leading to a diagnosis if they're not taken care of. So Dr. Marilyn Joyce is also a 5-time cancer survivor. So not only has she beaten this, but she's figured out energy and stress. She must have. So welcome. And it's so nice to have you with us. And I'm just feeding off your amazing energy.
Oh, thank you so much, Deborah. This is my joy and pleasure.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, I guess the best place to start, since this is around beating cancer, is the journey that I went on with cancer. Would that be a good place to start?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
love to have hope, and
yes. Well, it's 30 years.
Know what you've done.
Thank you. Yeah, I am, this is a celebratory year for me because this is 30 years clear.
Wow.
And I have, since then I've, had lots of fun, traveled around the world speaking and having a great time, as well as working hard and, the same amount of stress as everybody else has. That's life. It's about the wave, the ebb and flow of the ocean. The same is true of life. Mm-hmm. But in 1985, I was really successful and very driven, and I had 2 teenage kids to take care of, and I was divorced and single mom. And so I was really pedal to the metal. And I was honored to be asked to speak at my Dietetic Association annual event in Saskatchewan. I was up in Canada at the time. And that was when I looked in the mirror. Now, before that, I did look in the mirror, but I didn't pay much attention to what I saw in the mirror because I was busy getting kids ready for school, getting out to wherever I was going for a meeting or work that I was doing, a contract that I had, because I was an independent contractor. And that day I happened to look in the mirror and I saw a blue spot underneath my eye. And it was not as blue as it had been. In fact, it was more like a purpley black, hard bump. And when I went to the doctor said, how long have you had this? And I said, I don't know. I don't look in the mirror that often. And as it turned out, it was early stage, thank God, melanoma. And basically that was I didn't know anything about melanoma. I mean, I knew that I had been out in the sun, and when I was younger, I was a photographer. So I had done a lot of things where I was outdoors a lot, and I'm fair skinned, blue eyed. At that time I had blonde hair, when I was younger. And so really I just had no clue, like I said. And the big turning point though, that was an even worse turning point was, because of that, I was then rushed into hospital when I was doubled over with pain. Now, before that, for 2 years, I would go to the doctor and he would call it PMS. And I would say, this is the worst pain I have ever experienced. And it just got worse and worse. And as it turned out, it had been left too long. It was stage 4 uterine cancer. And that was a shocker. That I knew something about because in the work I was doing, I was familiar with older people's illnesses. I was only 35, but this was an illness that 2 of my great aunts had died from, and they were a lot older than I was when they died and when they were diagnosed. And so this was like, what am I doing wrong? I mean, I was in the health field. I thought I was eating better than anybody I knew. I had been familiar with what healthy food looked like. Of course, I didn't know what they were doing to our food at that point in time. You know, it looked good on the outside. So the journey began, and I went in and out of cancer for the next 5 years, a second time with melanoma and 2 more times with uterine cancer. And I won't go through all the details, but in 1989, I found myself 88 pounds in a wheelchair, unable to eat or drink anything. The only thing I could do was suck on ice chips. So I was kind of in the same place as my friend who just passed away, but there was a glimmer of hope for me that I can't describe, I can't explain. People tell me that I'm a survivor and thriver, you know, and I think there are many things I could talk about with respect to my past, which I will do at some point with my autobiography that I'm working on. But, you know, I came from a very disruptive background. So I survived childhood abuse and all the rest of that stuff. And, you know, was a runaway at 14. So there were a lot of things underneath that I had survived. And I think that gave me the strength that when I was going through this journey, I wasn't going to quit. You know, right. I didn't quit before, and, you know, I'm going to conquer this thing. And I was just about at the end of the rope, ready to go. And so I remember that experience of saying to somebody, you know what, I don't know if I can do this much longer. And that was when the miracle weekend began. And I call it that now, I didn't then, but when I was out speaking over the past 30 years, it came together. I realized that it was in that one weekend that the turning point happened. And during that weekend, I was taken off to a home show. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's a humongous show with lots of noise, lots of people, and lots of things that you would buy for your home. And here I am at that point I had been given less than 2 weeks to live. And I'm at a home show looking at stuff that you buy for your home with my daughter. I was convinced she was trying to get me to buy a bunch of stuff for her. I'm just kidding, really. But, you know, the point was that we ran into Jim, the Vitamix man. I have no recollection of his last name, but I remember his name was Jim, and he was a gorgeous young man, which made it all the easier to listen to him. But he asked if I would like to sample some of the things he was making, and I just said, no, I can't do it. You know, I mean, if I do, I'll just throw up in front of everyone. He said, oh, but you can suck on ice chips. And I said, yeah. He said, well, let me see what I can do for you. And he took cantaloupe and removed the skin from the cantaloupe very carefully with gloves and put the fruit into the Vitamix machine, which is like a 2-horsepower lawnmower for food. Nowadays, we have lots of other machines that, you know, will do the same job, like the Ninja and the, you know, Blendtec and so on. But at that time, it was just the Vitamix that was so powerful. And he put that in with the seeds. That was key. And ice, and made this really slushy mixture and handed it to me. And I sucked on that, and I didn't throw up. Now, the big thing here was that before that, I was sucking on ice chips with just water. Now I'm sucking on ice chips with nutrition.
Right.
And it was whole food nutrition. And so that was the beginning. Now, we had no clue what was going to happen, but that was the beginning. So that was Saturday. And on the Sunday, I was dragged off to another program, another big program with Dr. Bernie Siegel. And it was humongous. I think there were over 900 people in the audience. Of course, I was in a wheelchair, so they put me in the front. Now, at the time, I was angry about that. I wanted to be at the back so I could get out easily. But as it turned out, it was the best thing that ever happened. You know, God works his wonders in mysterious ways. And lo and behold, on the break, Dr. Siegel came over and asked me what was going on. And I told him what was going on in no uncertain terms. And he said to me that I sounded like I had blocks on my shoulder instead of, you know, chips. And I'm sure he was right. And when he asked me if I'd ever done a gratitude journal, I told him he was out of his mind. What did I have to be grateful for? That was the way I felt. And he said, well, you're here. That might be something to be grateful for, the people who got you here, and you're still here on the planet Earth. So that's something else to be grateful for. I couldn't see it quite like that, but that was what he was explaining to me. So he recommended that I immediately go home and start working on a gratitude journal. So I did the next day, and he had said, if you can't think of anything to be grateful for, anything at all, just think of one thing and say, thank you for that same thing. So I was up in Canada. It was winter, and it had been winter for a long time, kind of like the winter they're having this year. And there was a lot of snow and a lot of dismal gray days that we had. And I remember looking outside the window and saying, God, if you want me to write in this journal, then I need a sign. And it was not more than a few seconds later, Deborah, when all of a sudden it was like the clouds parted and the sun shone through for like just a minute at most. And then it was gone. And I remember turning to my girlfriend who was with me for a short while helping me out. And I said to her, gosh, what do you think? Do you think that's a sign? She said, I would say that's a sign. So I sat down and wrote, dear God, thank you for the sun. Thank you for the sun. Thank you for the sun 5 times. And that was the first day. A month later, I literally wrote 138 things that I was grateful for. And every single one of them was different. And what Dr. Siegel has said, what you focus on is what expands. Right. Or what you focus on expands. And literally that, I feel, was what happened. I focused on what I was grateful for. So I got a lot more to be grateful for, including 30 years more on planet Earth. And with respect to what I learned on the day before, we did come home, by the way, with the Vitamix machine. And there's a whole story around that, but I was given a year to pay for it. If I was still alive, send the money, and if I wasn't, okay.
Wow.
And we started making that cantaloupe slush, and for 6 weeks that was about all we put in it was cantaloupe, because we didn't want to, if it worked, why quit? Why try anything else? Don't do that. So we did the cantaloupe for 6 weeks, and then at that point in time, it became apparent that I had survived beyond the 2 weeks, so I'd outlived the prognosis. And if I could do that, maybe I could do it for longer. And I was actually beginning to have some energy, which I had not had any of. And we hired a physiotherapist to come and work with me to help me get out of the wheelchair, and because my muscle tone was completely gone. And basically, we started adding in other tropical fruits because they were high in enzymes initially. And wherever there were seeds, we incorporated the seeds. We didn't know why. I mean, I should have. I was a dietitian. My background was biochemistry, but it wasn't until after that journey when I started doing the research and I discovered that, in third world countries where they don't have a lot of money, they actually take the seeds from any kinds of squash and fruit and roast them and eat them. We throw them out. So it became apparent to me that there might be something in those seeds. And lo and behold, if they weren't part of the most nutritious part of the food to begin with.
So you can toast the pumpkin seeds and butternut squash seeds. They're delicious.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that was, the journey, really. It was a year later. I ran a mile. It took me 30 minutes, but I figured if I could run a mile, because I had been a runner. So I figured if I can run a mile, now I walk a mile in 15 minutes or less, 12 minutes now. But at that time, to accomplish that, it was like, I'm on the mend. And I think there was that hope. And, the doctors told me, stage 4 uterine cancer, it'll come back anyway. And so I figured, well, if it's going to come back, I'm going to take a trip. So I got in my car and drove down to New Mexico, and the rest was history. I ended up in California and worked at the Cancer of America and got my world just became an open world. And I think, that whole thing of what you focus on expands. I just focused on positivity. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have down days. I mean, I want to be really clear that there are times when, you know, the days are not so good like everybody else, but they're few and far between, comparatively speaking.
So at what point did you start writing?
Well, that's an interesting question, a good one. I had been writing for the Canadian government in order to pay for a lot of my school fees. You know, it was like one of those things where we were writing what would be called library books, like textbook kind of books, looking at, you know, information that people would be researching in the health field. And one of the books was to find all the pamphlets, health pamphlets around the world and compile them. And that book was a big book. And it ended up in all the libraries around the world. We didn't get paid a lot for that. We were paid a fee to do it. That was it. There were 3 of us that did that book, 3 students. Then that was it. You know, I didn't do any public books. I wrote a lot of articles for magazines, but I didn't do any public books until I came down to California. And then I started working for New Perspectives magazine as an editor. And then I became the lifestyle editor and the nutrition and lifestyle editor. It kept getting bigger and bigger, and did a lot of feature articles that weren't anything to do with health as well, but they were philosophical and psychological and so on. And then I started working at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America as the director of nutrition. And, you know, I got asked to do a TV show, and it was Doctor to Doctor with Dr. Helen Penzanti. And I had a manual that was very thick that I gave to all my patients, and we would go through that manual each time they came in. We would do more, and they'd come in for a week, a month. They'd fly in. And so that manual became a working manual. And what happened with Dr. Penzanti was she kept promoting a book called 5 Minutes to Health. And I said, I don't have a book. I would say that on the break, right? I don't have a book. She said, well, write the darn book. Mm-hmm. So I took the manual and literally spread it across my apartment in Los Angeles, West LA, spread the parts across the floor, which they sat on for 9 months. And it literally was 9 months. It was like birthing a baby. I literally wrote that book in 9 months, put it all together, and it was 5 Minutes to Health. Wow. And then I went across the country promoting it like Dr. Wayne Dyer had done with his, literally selling the books out of the back of my car and setting up with all the bookstores myself. Everyone said, you can't do it. You have to go through a distributor. I learned that I could be my own distributor if I did it right. And so that book went everywhere. And then it became a global book because I took it everywhere I spoke. So that was the first book. And it wasn't the book I wanted to write, but it was the beginning of writing for the public. Okay. And it was such an easy book to follow. And that was my whole goal. Everything, when I was going through the journey, Deborah, it was so darn complicated. Mm-hmm. I would open a book. The only book that wasn't was Louise Hay's book, you know, Love Your Life or whatever it was. And, you know, Heal Your Body. That was it. Heal Your Life and Heal Your Body. And that was the only easy to follow, easy to read book. The rest of them were so darn complicated. So I wanted to create something really easy and simple for people to follow. So everything in it was just easy, step by step, lots of charts. People loved it. It had, you know, 30 days of menus and all the rest of that. So it went really well, but there was more I wanted to cover because in my journey, obviously the 5 Minutes to Health was more of a nutrition book with a little bit of lifestyle. But my experience in getting in touch with what was wrong, one of the things I'll share is that Dr. Siegel had said to me, do you see cancer as your friend? And I said, are you out of your mind? Absolutely not. He said, good. It's a good sign. He said, do you see it as your enemy? And I said, yes. He said, that's not a good sign. Because what do you do with an enemy and what do you do with a friend? Well, with friends, you keep them around because you don't want to lose them. And with an enemy, you keep them around because you're always trying to get even or you're angry or, you know, you're negative towards them. So you're always thinking about them. He said, what if you thought of cancer as a teacher? What do you think it would be trying to teach you? wow. Now that was a new one for me. And he said, it's like, you know, when you're going to school, you learn your lesson and then you graduate. You go on to the next level. You learn those lessons and then you graduate and go on to the next. I'm having a couple of PhDs. I know that this is the case.
Right.
So yeah, so that was what happened. I
am literally speaking to him tomorrow, so this is really interesting.
Oh my goodness. That's fabulous. I dedicated the 5 Minutes to Health book to him, and I remember running up to him. Yeah, I mean, because I felt that he had changed so much for me at that time, because one, gratitude was something, you know, I came from Scotland. I'm a Scots lassie from a wee place called Auchtermuchty. And we didn't learn how to have a lot of gratitude. We learned how to be good to people. Scottish people are very giving and loving, but there's a lot of, you know, not so much gratitude. There is more now today, but the old country, you know. So I didn't have any connection with that until I started doing the gratitude journal. So that was one thing. But the other was more about what was it that I had to learn. And when I looked at my life, single mom, two kids, messy, you know, divorce, terrible background before, I really realized that I was having no fun and life was a burden. And what I had to learn to do was to let go. Now there's an expression, let go and let God. And for whatever, you know, whatever people believe in, I do believe in God. I didn't for a long time, but during that cancer journey, I did a lot of praying and I got really in touch with my higher power and with God. Mm-hmm. And so let go and let God. And it was really that, you know, that whole thing of learning to have fun, to laugh, to be with friends, just to be social, the work was not everything there was. I might not make the money that I made then. I could, I suppose, and I have, you know, since then. But at that time, I was making extremely good money. But that was all I was doing. Working hard at a job I hated and not making any money. And that's another thing I always say to people. If you don't like what you're doing, quit.
Right.
Find something that you're passionate about, because we didn't come to this earth, this lifetime, to be unhappy and struggle. We may have struggle, but we didn't come here for that. We just haven't learned how to move beyond that overall. Certainly, we didn't come here to work 24/7. I mean, if you look at the, you know, wildlife and the trees and so on, I'm sure they're not working 24/7. They're enjoying the sun. They're enjoying free time, you know.
So I think our culture, it's so hard for us to stop and be in the moment. I know it is for me too. Yeah. I kind of got to the point where I was feeling a lot of this and heading in that direction. So I created a sunroom with plants all around me, and I'm sitting right now and having this wonderful conversation. So I think, how can we take a step in that direction? I guess it's different for everybody, but maybe a 3-minute meditation in the morning. I think hardwiring a new habit is kind of difficult. Yeah. Is there anything practical maybe you can?
Absolutely. There's a number of things, Deborah. Thank you for asking that, because that's what I'm known for. I'm known for 5 minutes, easy strategies that anyone can do anywhere, anytime. And I've done them myself everywhere, at airports, on the plane, in hotel rooms. You don't need a lot of fancy equipment or anything else. One of the major things that you can do is just take 5. I have an expression that I put everywhere: take 5 to save 5. And what that means is take 5 minutes to save 5 years, because I lost 5 years really with the cancer journey. Now, it was a growth period, so I don't want to make it sound like there was nothing in it. There were a lot of great things that happened during that 5 years that I will write about at some point, but in my autobiography. But the point is that if you just, the simplest thing you can do is get a timer, and we all have it on our smartphone. Take your timer, set it for 5 minutes. And for most of us, we now have meditation music on our phone as well. I know I do. Turn that meditation music. Well, first of all, find a calm, peaceful place. For many people, it might be that living room that you never use except when company comes, but whatever it is, you go, you sit or lie down. I like sitting down because I don't want to fall asleep during that time. I want to be really just in the moment of peace. And then, but whatever works for the person, lie down, sit down, or sit on the floor. And
not checking out.
Yeah, it's like checking out of what you're involved in. Like if you're stressed out, take the time and just put on the music, set the timer, and then start breathing. And the breathing pattern should be a slow, rhythmic breathing. This goes back to my 1.5 years of studying yoga in India back in the early 70s during the hippie era. But what I learned was to just do this breathing, and it's like counting into 4, holding to 4, and releasing to 4. And so it's just like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's breathing into that 4, holding it, and then to 4, and releasing it to 4. And doing that for the 5 minutes. That way you're mindful, you're staying conscious and mindful, and then experiencing whatever you experience. And I talk a lot about that in my new stress book, but it's about experiencing whatever it is that's going on for you. It's not about, keeping your mind blank. It's about allowing whatever comes up to come up and then releasing it. Because that's how we learn to release stress, is by letting things come up, dealing with it, and releasing it. So during this 5 minutes, that's what you can do. What feeling is coming up? Oh, discomfort. Okay, let it go. Just let it go. Wherever that is, just focus on that while you're breathing and just let it go. And this is one of the easiest strategies. Every client and patient I've ever worked with loves that one. So then take it the next step. If you are somewhere where you can go outside and take off your shoes and socks, and I know where there's snow, it's a little harder to do that, but it's called earthing or grounding. And you just take off your shoes and socks. You can't do it with shoes and socks on. And you just walk in the earth, sand, grass, or grass. Those are the mediums that work. You can't do it on concrete. You shouldn't, and wood is not a conductor. So you definitely want to do it on grass, earth, or sand if you're near a beach. And just walk and do that same breathing pattern for 5 minutes. You can do it for longer, but for 5 minutes, that will make a huge difference. And they've actually got research that shows sticky blood platelets all stuck together, and in 5 minutes of doing this and the breathing, they all separate and go their own merry way. Wow. So your blood flow is way, way better. Their nutrition gets to your cells more easily. Yeah.
Well, that's really a wonderful practical tip, I think. And probably the more you practice doing that, the better it feels and the more you want to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my patients a few years ago was from the Northeast. And it was really hard for him. I mean, he lived in New York, for gosh sakes, right? But he made an effort, and then he got his family doing it, because that way, when the family does it, you'll do it. But winter came, and he didn't know what to do. So he had a flash, and he decided to build his own sand pit inside. So he literally built a sand pit with his kids inside, and big enough that it was like the family room. They put it in the family room, and they would all walk in this earth every day.
Wow.
So that's innovation, of course, and not everyone's willing to do that, but it is something you can do. Now you can buy grounding kits and all the rest of that stuff today, but this is the way to keep it simple. And if it's a family affair, it really works. And he was stage 4 cancer as well all those years ago, and he's still alive today with cancer-free.
Yeah, and I think if it is even a little colder out, they have grounding shoes.
Yes.
To walk outside.
Yep.
If it is cold out, I mean, 5 minutes isn't a long time. So
no, it isn't. No,
there's it gets you out in the sunshine and you connect to nature, and then you start breathing and you feel some joy.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems for most of us. There was a video that somebody put out. I think it was a company trying to sell solar panels or something. I'm not real sure, but it was called the Inside Generation or something like that. I did post it on Facebook when I saw it, because I thought, wow, this is so true. People spend 90% of their day indoors.
Right.
Today. Now, that's not the way people lived in the old days. You would never see any indigenous people living like that in their past lives. So what we need to do is to get out and reconnect to nature, hug a tree, listen to the birds. I walk every day and I stop and I smell the roses or the flowers or the bougainvillea, whatever it's called. You know, I literally stop and experience them all. I hug trees. I do all of those crazy things. People actually join me. They think it's fun. They may not understand why they're doing it, but they feel a lot better when they're done.
Wow, that's amazing.
You know, yeah, connecting to nature is so critical for us. Looking up at the sky and experiencing the beauty. You know, we have beauty around us, but we get stuck in the struggle. We get stuck in the indoor life. We get stuck in behind a desk. And my philosophy is every hour, get up. Get off your seat and on your feet and do something different. Change your state. Critical. That regenerates your spirit, and it also regenerates your physical body at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
So because I don't think it's enough all the time to just hit cancer from the nutrition point of view. I think there's that missing link.
Yeah.
With
mind, body,
stress
spirit.
and energy,
Yeah.
and laughter and authenticity and yes. There's more intangible things. So that's why I always like to, if there's practical tips or information, because I think that's the missing piece a lot.
Yes, it is. And, you know, don't be wrong though, Deborah. I do feel that nutrition is you've got to have a good foundation of nutrition.
Absolutely.
However, there, you know, I remember one patient saying, do you mean I have to give up chocolate forever? And I said, if I had to give up chocolate forever, I would rather not be here. I'll go somewhere else, another plane where you can have chocolate. So, you know, it's not about not having those things, but it is about 90% of the time. If you aim for 90% of the time, you'll probably hit 80. But it's really that Pareto's principle, you know, the 80-20 principle. I say go for 90, you'll hit 80. But right. Go for really healthy food. Look for organic first. You know, I mean, that's the key. Fair trade, organic coffee, for example, or fair trade if you're going to have coffee. And I don't see anything wrong with coffee or chocolate or anything else as long as you look for the best quality. It's quality, not quantity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of that. And it's not popular.
It's not popular. The supersized meals, you know, people go to restaurants because they serve these huge meals. And I'm saying, you know what? I really like the restaurant down the road where they serve little portions of each thing.
Right.
And that's
it's more high quality. But I think that's another, we're again moving so fast, we don't put our hands on the food and connect to cooking it. And that creativity, that's another way of honoring yourself and finding some joy and producing something. And I've always loved to cook. I'm Italian. And it's funny because I started out as a personal trainer. I have an allied health background, but then I got into personal training and I was training clients. And when we were done, I'd come upstairs and we were hungry and I started cooking for people because everyone was like, well, you mean I have to cook food? And I'm like, well, how else do you eat? I really didn't even understand. And then from there, I kind of got a health coaching certification and then cancer coaching. And it just kind of blossomed for me. But the masses do not cook or know how to cook or understand how to read labels and the wonderful flavors that Mother Nature has. Like you said, the cantaloupe with the seeds and things. And I'm sure that that must have felt like a treat.
Absolutely. It was to go from not having anything but ice to having the cantaloupe. It was like a treat. And it was delicious. You know, it was something that, well, I think when you haven't had food for so long,
Right.
and then you have something that is kind of sweet but naturally sweet, and
Right.
cantaloupe is actually lower in sugar than most other fruits.
Right.
So
And it has a
yeah,
beautiful color.
yeah, the color and the, you know, there was that nutty flavor as well from the seeds,
Right.
which, you know, I never, at the time, I just knew that I was able to keep it down and it tasted good. And when we started implementing other fruits like mango and papaya, because those were originally the ones we implemented to incorporate more enzymes, because up in Canada, particularly in the winter, fruit was pretty low in enzymes.
Right.
So there was that aspect of it. And I think because my journey really was about whole food as the very base. It started with the cantaloupe, we added in other fruits, and then gradually we started doing, I couldn't call them soups, but like what someone might call green drinks now, right? I mean, green drinks have become all the fad, but back then I was just doing it to survive. And I have specific recipes, which I'd be happy to forward on. But they were recipes that saved my life. And it was just take these two recipes. One was a smoothie, one was a soup, a vegetable mixture. And then it was just varying the vegetables as we went along, so that it wasn't always the same old thing. And it was amazing just, you know, going through that for the first few months. And then I had been vegan for years before I was diagnosed with cancer. So I wasn't really, and it wasn't for health and nutrition as much as principle. So I was really hesitant to add in any kind of animal protein initially. So I just added in tofu, and we searched out GMO-free soy and tofu, and that was basically in a carton, already prepared. It was a company called Maury. It was the only one, I think, at the time. There's lots now, but back then, you know, at that point in history, it was only that one company, and they just started doing it, as it turned out. I didn't know that. And we ordered it from the US. Ironically, a few years later, when I was looking for companies to sponsor my talks, I was calling around, and this one company said, why don't you come in and we'll give you some tofu and for your demonstrations and so for the hospitals. And when I went in, the very lady that I had purchased the tofu from looked at me and said, gosh, you've got the same name as the woman who used to order tofu from us from up in Canada. You know, I mean, she used to order a case at a time or a couple of cases, and she had the same name as you. And then she looked at me as I smiled and said,
Me.
was that you? And our friendship just blossomed from there. And I ended up working with the company, doing all kinds of seminars for them. Life is funny in the world. The earth and world is small. Yeah.
It really is.
But that was the protein initially. And then when I was not getting the energy back immediately, I started researching, which is what my background is as a researcher, and found an article that just kind of fell on top of me in the library on a journal that opened up at Ancestral Diet is the Key. So I called up my father in Scotland and I said, what besides haggis and chips do Scots people eat? And my father laughed and he said, you know that they eat healthier than that. Your grandparents grew all their own food. Oh my goodness, I completely spaced on that. So yeah, so it was like incorporating fish and then, you know, more vegetables that were cruciferous vegetables, really studying foods much more than I had when I was going to school. I mean, in school, I was just trying to get my degree so I could go out and get a really good job. Right. And I was interested in it, but I was more interested in the administration than I was the nutrition at one point. You know, it was like, really, how do you make it work in food service? So kind of thing, or hospitals. But anyway, long and short of it was, now I have a great interest in nutrition, but I also see it only as one peg of 5. You know, because the 5 keys to unlimited energy and vitality, the energy, the word energy is the acronym, and the N is nutrition, but the rest is not. It's the first thing is exhale fully first so you can inhale fully. So that's breathing. You know, the second E is exercise for cellular rejuvenation. Then there's the R of rest, relax, and rejuvenate. And then, of course, we've got the G of gratitude, attitude. And the Y is interesting. It's 5 keys, but the Y is your 5 keys, because I have in Instant Energy alone, and that's in my other book, I have just about as many tips and tricks and whatever strategies. There's hundreds of them. So it's like finding the 5 keys that work for you. We can vary them out, but it's what works for you, your 5 keys. So there you have it. It's 5 keys and only one is nutrition. If you don't have them all in place, I learned this in yoga, it was in India. If you don't have all 5 in place, you will never be fully well.
Right.
And that's why people say, well, for example, Linda McCartney, why did she die? She ate so well, so healthy, grew all her own food. And I say, yeah, but she was being dragged around the world by a husband who was a musician and forced to play the drums when she was a photographer. That was her joy and passion. When you don't have your passion, I like I said earlier, when patients tell me that they hate their job, the first thing I say to them is, quit. Find your passion and live it, whatever it is, because you're going to make money on it. Maybe not right away, but you will make money eventually because you're living authentically.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful message.
It's really the way, I think being almost 70 now, it's like I see the world through different eyes than I did even when I was going through the cancer journey, or even for the first, 20 years afterwards.
Well, I
It's
think
like
I've heard people say that they were actually grateful for their diagnosis because it allowed them to stop and realize what changes they needed to make, and they were able then to take the time, because they had to make changes, and now to live a joyful life. And a lot of people have a brand new career. Some of them are our coaches, that have wonderful businesses where they now feel that they're doing something authentic, and they're living a life that they feel is meaningful and purposeful, and they're joyful about it. So maybe people did make a move and changed a job, moved somewhere different, changed a relationship. It can be, if you use it in that way, it can be something to be grateful for.
Absolutely. And, I don't think we're ever given any challenges that we're not able to overcome if we're meant to. Now, I believe that our soul knows when it's ready to go. And so for some people, it's earlier than others. But I think when you've actually fulfilled whatever the purpose was that you came for, oftentimes that could be early in life. You may decide to leave. Your soul may decide to leave. Right. But, because I know with my grandparents, Deborah, on my mom's side, they both chose when they were going to go. They lived to 97, each of them. There was a 10-year difference. Wow. They each lived to 97, died of no major illness. Literally, they just called me up and said, I've decided to go and meet my maker. Could you come and join me? So I flew over to Scotland. I spent the time with my granddad before he passed away, listened to his amazing stories. Then my grandmother, 10 years later, they planned it before he left. 10 years later, she called me up from Scotland and said, would you come over and be with me for a few days before I depart? Wow. It was an amazing experience just to know that, because now I realize that we all make that decision. Every day is a gift. We wake up and, how we decide to start the day is how it's going to end up being. So we can get up and feel angry and frustrated. And I'm not that good early in the morning, but I start my day by saying to myself, sometimes out loud a lot, but or loudly, but many times just within myself, today something wonderful is going to happen, or something wonderful is going to happen today. I love my life. And just starting off with that, you can get through the worst of things. I did
intentions, right?
Yeah, it's all about setting intentions and seeing today as a gift. I mean, it is the present. That means something. It's the gift.
That's right.
Yeah, there's an expression, yesterday is like a canceled check, tomorrow is like a promissory note. Today is cash in hand. It's
I
the
love
gift.
it. That's
Spend
great.
it wisely. Yeah.
Yeah, there are great things to think about. It's all perspective.
Yeah, it's all perspective. Yeah, and it's
So, what are you doing today?
right now I'm working on a major project with young people. I went into the universities with my stress book, Stress to Success Formula, and marketing classes. And when I was there, somehow the kids asked me about my life, and I started sharing where I came from. And the kids were so inspired in all the universities that not only did they give me amazing input as to how to market the book and get it out there, more about getting it out there than marketing and making it a mission. Because the young people today are so mission oriented. That's what I love about them. But anyway, my objective, and I'm working with the local university on this now, is to take this information, my talk that they love, and also, incorporate simple, quick stress strategies, stress release strategies for them that they can do anywhere, anytime. And most young people love 5 minutes or less, and that's what mine are. And take that out there to all the universities, colleges, and high schools. And that was their recommendation. And I felt that surge in my body that I had finally found what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
That's really, really needed, because some of these programs are extremely rigorous and demanding. Yes. I know. I mean, I have a graduate degree in occupational therapy, and that was pretty rigorous. But
yes,
I did. We had to do gross anatomy with the med students, and theirs was even more rigorous. So I can't even imagine what they go through.
Exactly.
And that takes a toll on your health. So that's really wonderful that you're doing that. That's really, really much needed. And then they have these habits in place at a younger age, which is really valuable.
Absolutely.
Because nobody teaches us these things until we're sick.
Well, the thing that I never realized was the level of stress that these kids are under, and how they're, what they're, drugs that they're taking and other things to stay awake, to study, to get top grades. And I just, I knew that I had a lot of stress when I was going through my educational years, but these kids today, because they're 24/7. I mean, when I went to university, yes, granted, as in the later years, we had at least cell phones, but we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have 24/7 online, lifestyle.
Let me silence that. There's practical life.
Yeah, there's practical life. Exactly. I keep hoping that Murphy the kitty cat isn't going to start meowing, because that's something he does. So I told him no meowing while we're doing this interview.
That's okay. It's casual. This is real life.
Real life.
So where can people find you now?
Well, probably the easy. You know what? One of the best places is where I actually have a free 10 top tips, and it's 5-minute 5-minute energy tip. 5-minute energy tips, I believe. Oh my goodness, isn't that terrible?
That's the gist, right? That's the gist.
Yeah, 5-minute energy tips. So it's the number 5 and S on tips. So it's 5-minute energy tips. Yeah.
Is that on your website?
That is a website, and it does have a downloadable, program. I mean, ebook. And then my main website is just drmarilynjoyce.com. So it's drmarilynjoyce.com. And that is, where they'll find all kinds of information and books and, just a lot of tips, etc.
You can find your books there. Okay. And then you have a couple Facebook pages too, right?
I do. I have a lot of them, but probably the best one again is Dr. Marilyn Joyce. Dr. Marilyn Joyce.
Okay.
Yeah. So that one is where I put out tips. Also, the Stress to Success formula. Now that's where I put out a lot of tips. It's a newer page, but I put out a tip every single day, a stress tip every day.
That's a Facebook page.
Yeah, that's a Facebook page. The stress.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I do it on LinkedIn and I do it on Instagram, but the Facebook page is the one where most people go. So yeah.
And that is that a takeoff on your book?
Yes, it is. It's
okay.
It is. It's the exact same name, the Stress to Success formula, and it is the Stress to Success formula.
Okay.
So, and it's it's the one where I put the most work into. It's where I feel that I can contribute that stress tip a day. That was actually the recommendation of the students as well. And then they recommended doing it on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is where I do a lot of professional stuff. But for the general public, it's, Facebook, Instagram. Yeah. I'm not so big on Twitter. I do post there, but, LinkedIn is like I said, for the professional stuff that I'm doing. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you for all your tips. And it was so wonderful to hear your journey and to learn all about you. Really wonderful, and your energy is amazing. They call you the Vitality Doctor, right?
Yes, they do. And I didn't call myself that. It was my patients who said, "You're the Vitality Doctor."
Well, that's quite a claim to fame, quite a compliment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us, and I hope that people go to your website and check out these wonderful tips and try out your books. And yeah, because it's stress is something that will sap your energy, and
Absolutely.
we need to incorporate some of these techniques into our everyday life because we're worth it.
Yeah, we are. And I think that's beautifully said, Deborah. We are worth it. And it starts with taking care of ourselves. Like when you're on an airplane, you're told to put your mask on first, your oxygen mask, so that then you can help others. It's the same thing with your own health. You got to take care of your own health. You're no good to anybody if you don't. And that's the whole person health, mind, body, spirit.
So that's important for prevention. That's important if you're a caretaker.
Absolutely.
Important if you already have a diagnosis. So
absolutely.
Right. So thank you so much. It's been so wonderful speaking with you.
Oh, it's been a joy. I've loved it.
Thank you. Have a great day.